Now to Syria, where it's claimed hundreds of civilians have been killed by chemical weapons. The reported attack has been described as a serious escalation by the UN, and foreign leaders are outraged. But President Assad is still denying the allegations. A warning some viewers may find this story disturbing. Our Europe correspondent Ben Lewis reports.
If the claims of the Syrian opposition are true, these people are just some of the victims of the worst chemical weapons attack in decades.
We awoke and found we were all suffocating. We were suffocating. Look at the children. You see them right here.
This is the vision we can show, taken at a medical centre near Damascus, but it cannot be independently verified. Other footage, too graphic for television, shows dozens of children's bodies, while those alive are foaming at the mouth, struggling to breathe. These efforts of amateur filmmakers and citizen journalists, the only way the Western world can assess what has happened.
Everyone was just horrified and they didn't know what to do.
The UN Security Council is demanding an investigation, but with China and Russia backing the Syrian government, more serious action, including the use of force, is unlikely.
This represents, no matter what the conclusions are, a serious escalation with grave humanitarian consequences.
If there is a factual basis to any regime in the world using chemical weapons against people, frankly, we enter into a new level of barbarism.
The Assad regime denies any chemical weapons were used, calling the claims a fabrication by rebel forces. Experts say the video is not conclusive, but certainly indicates some sort of exposure to toxic substances.
The shaking of limbs, dilation of pupils in some cases, which would be consistent with some kind of trauma to the nervous system.
The timing of the attack is provocative in itself. UN chemical weapons inspectors are already in Syria, visiting other sites. Chemical weapons have not been used on a large scale since Saddam Hussein's attack on thousands of Kurds in the Iraq-Iran war 25 years ago. President Obama described the use of such weapons as a red line that would prompt serious consequences if crossed. These Syrians are still waiting to see what those consequences are.
For more on this, I'm joined by Michael Singh, Managing Director of the Washington Institute and former Senior Director of Middle East Affairs at the National Security Council. Mr. Singh, we've looked at these images. They are so shocking. Why is it so difficult for credible reports to be confirmed?
Well, obviously the Syrian regime has not allowed reporters into Syria, and so we see these images come out, but these are images sort of taken by cell phone cameras or that are somehow otherwise leaked out to the West. It's difficult to establish facts on the ground without teams in place, without journalists in place.
Is that not perfect information an excuse for inaction?
Well, the not perfect information makes it difficult to take action because, of course, Western governments, if they're going to engage in some kind of intervention, especially a military intervention, of course want to be quite sure of what's happened. But, of course, there's a cost to inaction as well. If you simply say, well, let's wait for the facts, well, the facts could take a long time to be established if they're really ever established at all.
If these claims of the use of chemical weapons are as widespread as feared, what happens next? What needs to be done? What does the international community need to do?
Well, I think that it's important that there be some sort of price for the regime, if in fact the regime has used these chemical weapons, for violating international norms in such a gross and in such a brutal way. Military intervention is obviously quite a serious step, quite difficult, quite costly, and it's something that the West has been reluctant to do.
It seems in the first instance the calls have been for the UN inspectors who are already in Syria on another mission to be diverted to investigate this. What's the likelihood of that actually happening?
Well, of course, the inspectors could quite easily go to this area and try to establish the facts, and the facts wouldn't be so difficult to establish. But the regime has been very reluctant in the past to offer access to chemical weapons inspectors or other forms of WMD inspectors in the country. In fact, they have frankly obstructed the mission of these chemical weapons inspectors up until now.
How much does America's involvement depend on Russia's involvement?
Well, I think that Russia is a key factor because, look, this is the sort of situation that the Security Council is designed to address. And right now, the Security Council can't address it because Russia really won't allow any kind of pressure on the regime to move forward. Very difficult decisions for Western governments, including the United States.
Can you tell us why Australians need to be concerned as a civilised nation about what exactly is going on in Syria?
Well, I think first and foremost, it comes down to values. Australia, like the United States, like many countries in Europe, we're democratic nations. We believe in universal human rights. But also, I think there are quite serious security implications for Australia, for the United States, and other Western countries. There are, for example, in this Syria conflict, many foreign fighters, foreign jihadists who are going to Syria and eventually will come back to the West and perhaps try to target Western countries after they're done with the fight in Syria.
Michael Singh from the Washington Institute, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.